Yá'át'ééh, bene. Good morning, my relatives. Have you ever had a plan, a vision, an idea, something you've wanted to do, something you've wanted to accomplish, and you know where you want to get to, but you're not quite sure how you're going to get there? And not only are you unsure how to get there, but you're doing it in a public way. People are watching, they're kind of looking at what you're doing. They want to join you, but they're not quite sure where to jump in. And you're trying to figure it out while you're going along the way. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like parenting, right? You're parenting, you're raising a family, you're raising these children, and they're watching you very intently. They're observing you, and you're trying to figure it out as you go through the process. Well, today, over my second cup of coffee, which I'm glad you can join me for, I want to talk about the work I'm trying to do, the challenges I'm I've encountered while trying to change the world, but doing it in a very public way while people are watching. I want to share with you some thoughts and ideas and have some type of good discussion about it. So, my name is Mark Charles. I am a dual citizen of the United States and the Navajo Nation. I was an independent candidate for president in 2020 with a vision of building a nation where we, the people, actually means all the people. I am the author of a book called Unsettling Truth, the ongoing dehumanizing legacy of the doctrine of discovery. And I am working to try and create a common memory, not to cancel people, not to hurt or harm people, but to build a better community in a way that we can move forward in a positive way together. In our Navajo culture, we would call it walking in beauty. And that's what I'm trying to do weekly over my second cups of coffee. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining me. Let's get into the discussion. Well, my relatives, it's good to have you here. I want to begin like I always do, which is acknowledging that I am speaking to you from Washington or Washington, D.C. These are the lands of the Piscataway, and I want to honor the Piscataway as the host peoples of these lands. And I want to publicly thank the Piscataway for their stewardship of these lands and just state how humbled I am to be living on these lands today. Over the discussion today, I was trying to think what I want to talk about, and I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks. I've done a lot of very intense journaling and trying to figure out not only where I know where I'm going, right? If you follow me for any length of time, you know that I have a vision of trying to build a nation where we the people means all the people. I want to edit our Constitution. I want to institute a national dialogue on race, gender, and class, a national truth and conciliation commission. I want to wrestle with and deal with the way that we base land titles on this dehumanizing doctrine of discovery. I literally, in my lifetime, my goal is I want to change the world. And I ran for president in 2020 with that goal in mind. And I very publicly came out and said, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to go. And this is one of the ways I want to try to get there. Now, obviously, that campaign didn't bring the results I had hoped for. And it taught me some things both about myself as well as about the nation that I live in and the challenges that are being faced here. But it didn't change my goal. It didn't change my desire to institute these changes, and it didn't change what I want to do and where I want to bring not only myself, but my nation to. And so, as I've been pondering this over the past 3 years since the 2020 campaign ended, and as now we're obviously going into the 2024 campaign, and I've stated very clearly I'm not running in this campaign. It pains me to see that both Donald Trump and Joe Biden are the presumptive nominees of the two major parties. This is going to be an absolute just useless replay of the dialogue we had 4 years ago. But I've decided I'm not going to join the race this year, and I'm going to continue working on the stuff I'm working on to try and move what I want to do forward in other avenues and in other ways. Not closing the door to running again in the future, but definitely saying, yeah, I'm not going to do it in this election cycle. And so what this has made me think about is, okay, what is the goal then of the stuff I'm doing more regularly? Like I'm writing books, I'm speaking, and I'm educating. I'm doing my second cups of coffee. I'm doing my Patreon. and what is the goal of all these things that I'm involved in. I see Shantina's here. Yá'át'ééh, Shantina, thanks for joining. Good to have you here. I see Ola DJ. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, but thank you for being here. It's great to have people on with me this morning. I wanted to. I'm doing these things, and I'm doing them regularly, and I have that right. My audience is kind of a mixed audience. There's a lot of people who have been following me from even well before the campaign, as I've been talking about my vision for a Truth and Conciliation Commission and talking about my vision to wrestle with the foundations of our nation. Then I have a lot of people who follow me who heard about me through the campaign, and they're very much want to be a part of that change. And yet the work that I'm doing is not yet a national dialogue, right? It's the nation doesn't know about the doctrine of discovery, and every conversation I go into, I'm educating people from ground zero to try to bring them up to speed on what's been done and what the history is and where we need to go. And it feels frequently like I'm having the same conversation over and over and over again. But yet I still have an audience, a growing audience of people who've been with me for a while, who very much understand the history, understand the vision, and want to be a part of what moving it forward. But we don't have the momentum to really bring in a national dialogue yet. And so it leaves me in this very weird space where I'm trying to educate. I'm trying to move this vision forward. I absolutely want to change the world. But I have to keep going back to bring people along who haven't been on this journey with me before. And so it's trying to change the world while people are watching. And while there's large segments of time where not a lot is really happening, right? There's not a lot of progress being made or movement being made. And I'll just give you one example of this. So I ran for president in 2020, and I literally was hoping, and I had hope that by running as an independent candidate in the general election of the 2020 campaign, I would have good success in elevating the dialogue around the doctrine of discovery to a more national level. And I thought it would be one way that the media would be more inclined or even compelled to pay attention to me. The other candidates would be more inclined and even compelled to wrestle with the stuff I was saying. And just being brutally honest, I was deeply shocked at how intentionally both the media and the two parties ignored me and my campaign and the people who were working with us throughout the entire 2020 election cycle. That really, it shocked me. And because as an independent candidate, we were actually doing fairly well. We were, aside from the billionaires and the two other major third parties, the Green Party and the Libertarians, we were the highest fundraising independent campaign in the 2020 election. I was on the main stage with several of the both Democrat and Republican candidates during the primary. And when I was on the stage, I held my own. And I thought that sort of exposure and that sort of showing would bring more attention to the arguments I was laying out. But they didn't. And so since my campaign, I've been literally thinking through what do I need to do to help my nation engage with this dialogue again. And at some point, I'm going to do something again. It may be running for president, it may be something else to try and engage this dialogue at a much more national level. One of the first things I realized after the 2020 campaign was over was that one of the things, because it had been 2 decades prior to that I had been pondering this dialogue and researching this history and wrestling with this and trying to teach it and trying to find out how to bring this into a more national dialogue or at least debate. But I had literally 20 years of trying to learn this content and figure it out. And one of the most helpful things during that period that helped me grapple with this at a deep, both emotional and even spiritual level was watching the sunrise. By waking up every morning and watching the sunrise, it impressed upon me deeply how much I'm actually not in control. And it helped me to feel comfortable in that state of not being in control. And it really expanded my vision for the type of change that not only was needed, but might be attainable. So watching the sunrise played a very pivotal role in even me coming to a place where I could attempt to go into this dialogue where I had no idea what the outcome was going to be. And I will be as honest as I can, right? It was as scary to me as it was to the rest of the nation, right? To fundamentally change what's written in our founding documents and to change the way even capitalism in our nation works by wrestling with the legal precedent for land titles, which right now is the dehumanizing doctrine of discovery. And so coming out of that campaign, and I had let my discipline of watching the sunrise wane during some of those years, that period leading up to in the campaign, mostly when I moved to DC and didn't have the ability to watch the sunrise so easily. I realized, I have to watch the sunrise. I have to get back into that again. And that's when I drove around the city and I found the place where I go along the Potomac River, and I would a 15-minute drive there, and I would go there in the mornings. And this was during COVID, so my kids were doing online school. I wasn't traveling, so every morning I could go there and watch the sunrise, and it rejuvenated me. And I made the intentional decision when I went there, because when I watched the sunrise, especially back on the reservation, every morning I would walk up the hill and watch the sunrise by myself and greet it with my prayers and my thanksgivings to Creator. And then I would take a picture of it and I would post pictures on my social media. If you go back several years on my social media, you will see every morning for almost a decade, there are pictures after pictures after pictures of the sunrise. Every morning I would post a picture of it. And when I started watching again after the 2020 election, I decided, okay, rather than posting a picture, I'm going to live stream it. I'm going to take my phone and live stream it and then post the video on my other social media. And I did that intentionally. So I wouldn't just be reminding people the sun is rising. I wouldn't just be inviting them to watch it on their own by showing them a picture of it. But I would actually be giving them an opportunity to start their day either with me on the live stream or by going back and watching the video and greeting the sunrise. And they could see the seasons change and the sun moving up and down the horizon. And they could see the birds migrating and they could see the seasons coming and going. And they could be a part of that transformation. And I did that in the hope that it would help train, disciple my nation and help bring them into the same space that I had to be brought into so that I could be willing to even wrestle with such foundational issues like dealing with the doctrine of discovery and changing what's written in our founding documents. And that's an ongoing endeavor, right? I because of my schedule right now, I can't watch the sunrise even weekly. I can only do it on the weekends because during the week I take my daughters to school and they leave early enough that I can't get out to see the sunrise and get back in time. And so I can only do it on the weekends, and I only do it on the weekends when it's clear. So it's literally maybe 2 or 3 times a month I'm able to do it now, as compared to 2 or 3 or even 4 or 5 times a week I was doing it before. But I still, every time I do it, I film it and I invite people to join into that. And the frustrating thing is, right, it's maybe 4 or 5 people, if that, join me for it live. And maybe 20 to 30 to a few hundred may watch any specific video that's posted online about it. And so that's a little disheartening. But what's encouraging is as I travel, I'm frequently greeted by people who thank me for live streaming the sunrises and tell me they love to watch them. They love that I live in a place where I can't see the sunrise, or I have a schedule that doesn't allow me to watch sunrise, and I love watching your sunrises. Thank you so much for posting them. And that gives me hope. That encourages me. But again, this is a long-term process. Like I could be doing this for the rest of my life. I will probably be doing this for the rest of my life, but it's a transformation that I'm looking for, not an instant change. And it's something that's going to take root over a longer period of time and over a longer process. And so again, this is something I do on a regular basis, but it doesn't result in anything being different really from one day to the next. The other thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying very hard to figure out how to use these second cups of coffee. I realized a few months ago, and when I started these second cups of coffee, I started them during my campaign, and we posted them both on my campaign website, on my social media, and on my personal social media. And we did it in a way to keep both family and friends and people who follow my work and have been following my work for a long time, as well as people who were following the campaign, abreast of what was going on in the campaign, of my daily schedule, of things we were doing and places we were going to be, and things that were on our schedule, and what we were kind of looking at on the more immediate horizon. And it just gave me a good way to communicate on a fairly regular basis, almost daily, with people throughout my campaign. I then made the decision after the campaign to continue doing it on my personal social media, because I felt it was a great way to begin to gather an audience and to keep an audience together and to continue to kind of move forward in this process of, again, trying to change the world. But what it became more of a place where I critiqued politics and talked about the news, which isn't bad and is in some ways necessary. But that doesn't help move my conversation forward, right? It doesn't help me bring people to another place. It's good to point things out, and it's good to have comments on the news throughout, as things are happening. But when the bulk of my second cup of coffee became about critiquing the news and about critiquing Donald Trump or Joe Biden or the two parties or the church or whatever else was going on, I realized that's not what I want to do, right? I don't want to just be someone who screams on the sidelines of, hey, I don't like this and I don't like that, and they could have done that better and they could have done these better. I want to engage a better dialogue. And so I began commenting on things not as much in real time, and saving my responses or my critiques for a later date to allow myself to kind of really think, is this necessary to talk about these things? Now, just one example, right? I mean, I haven't talked at all about the fact that President Trump, our former President Trump, is hawking Bibles, right? He's selling Bibles. And if I'll just share you the link, right? If you read the link, this came out a few weeks ago. This came out over Easter. And he's been hawking Bibles. He has the official Trump endorsed version of it. And it's the God Bless the USA Bible. He's selling it for $60, $59.99. And right, this is while he's under tremendous pressure with all his legal bills, and he's trying to delay his trials, and he's trying to earn money. And so there's a lot of people, especially in the Christian world, who have been screaming, why is Trump hawking Bibles? This is Christian nationalism and blah, blah, blah. And I decided, I don't want to join that screaming match. Why? Well, because if you follow me for any length of time, I've been saying it's not just Trump, it's Biden too. This whole nation is Christian nationalism. right? Trump's just being explicit about it. But the whole nation, you go to any church service and you don't have to sit there very long before one of the songs talks about Christian nationalism, or the pastor claims some promise meant for Israel in the Old Testament and applies it to the United States, right? This whole nation is seeping in Christian nationalism. So just pointing out that Trump is doing it and making some money off it, that's not the conversation I want to join. I have been watching a bit more carefully Trump's media company, right? Truth Social, which just started trading publicly a few weeks ago. And it came online. It went public at an initial offering of around $35, maybe $40 a share. And it shot up. I think the highest it went up to was over $65, almost $66 a share. And then a report came out, right, that it was, and so I'll just share with you some of this. Again, I don't want to get into the minutia here, but right. So I've been following this a bit more closely because I think this is more important, right? And so after Trump's Truth Social Media company went public, and the stock shot up to like a $6 billion valuation, right? And clearly it was his supporters who are adamant that they want to support him and help him get rich again. And it went astronomically high. And then about 2 weeks ago, just around the beginning of April, because now it's a publicly traded company, they had to release their financials, right? And they reported that they had $58 million of losses in 2023 on $4.1 million of revenue. Right? I mean, this is just, of all of the shams Trump has tried to run on people, this is massive, right? This company has no revenue. They have no $4.1 million of revenue, and they have $58 million in debt in 2023, and their valuation is $6 billion. And they refuse to release their metrics of how many users they have and how many views they have, because, of course, that will just destroy their company even more. And so since that has come out, right, Trump's company has lost a third of its value. And it's back down to about the same price it went up as a public offering. I think it was trading this morning at $36, around $36 a share. And if you listen to any financial advisor, which I am not one, by the way, and so don't invest based on my account, but what as you read any sort of investment opinions out there, everyone is saying absolutely avoid this stock, right? They have no revenue, they're nothing but debt. They're like, I've literally read some articles where it said you're an idiot, you're a fool if you invest your money in Trump's media company. And I think there's actually something bigger there than Trump hawking Bibles. And yes, his Christian nationalist, white evangelical audience is going to run out and buy his Bible, the Trump-endorsed version of the Bible, which includes the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the song God Bless the USA by, I forget who, some country singer wrote it and put it in there. And again, it's a heresy, right? Jesus was very clear. He did not come to create a Christian nation. He did not come to be king. He's very clear, right? Unsettling truths. Eusebius, Constantine, right? If you want to prop up the heresy of Christian nationalism, you have to write Christ out of ecclesiastical history, which is exactly what Eusebius did. Augustine props that up with his just war theory, right? This is just all the stuff I've been talking about. So yeah, the Bible is absolute heresy. And Trump is profiting off of it. what I think makes a very good analysis is probably many of the same people who are buying the Bible, Trump's endorsed Bible, which you can't even quote because, right, I'm not even going to go there, okay? These are probably some of the same people who are investing money in his media company. And this just shows how deceived they are, right? Literally, financial analysts are saying, if you invest money in Trump's media company, you are an idiot. You're being scammed. The company has no revenue. They lost $58 million on $4.1 million of revenue in 2023. Do not invest. They say over and over. Just Google it. You'll see article after article of people saying this. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just telling you what I've been observing and reading as I'm looking at this. And I think that's what's even more interesting is that this demographic that supports Trump, they continue to double down over and over and over and over again on what they know is a losing hand. And yet they continue to double down on it. And I think that's what's even a bigger story. But anyway, so this is why I'm trying not to just jump in and analyze every headline that comes out every day, because there's something bigger going on. And if I just jump on, let's scream about the Trump Bible, and right, we're going to miss the forest for the trees, right? We're not going to, I actually used that quote with my daughter yesterday. We're going to miss the forest for the trees if we just stand up and scream about every headline that comes out that day. And so this is the challenging work about what I'm trying to do, because I want to be a part of the more national dialogue, but I don't want to talk about the things the New York Times tells us to talk about, or the things that CNN tells us to talk about, the things Fox News tells us, because they are literally just trying to get clicks, right? They're literally just trying to get people to click on their things to pay their advertisers. That's what they're trying to do. They are not interested in a deeper dialogue. And the change that I want to bring, right? I'm trying to get people to watch a sunrise. And so a lot of the work I'm trying to do is the exact opposite of what we as a people, a nation, even a globe, are being conditioned to do. And so, yeah, so this is where a lot of these challenges come up. One of the things I want to do a bit more frequently during these times is I want to talk about some of the books that I'm reading, even before I finish them. And I want to do this because these are the things that shape my thinking day to day, and that get me to think deeper about things that are going on. And so one of the books I'm reading 3 books right now. Well, one I'm probably not going to continue reading, but I'll tell you a little bit about it first. So one of the books I started reading the other day is this book called 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think. It's by Brianna Wiest. And I forget how I got exposed to it. It was a recommendation on one of my social medias, and I kind of looked at it. And so I started looking at it. And there were a few topics in there that I thought would be helpful. I read some reviews, and people said, yeah, there's some of the essays that are really kind of deep and insightful, and others that are just kind of, they didn't use the word toxic positivity, but that's kind of what I got the sense it was. And so I got the book and started listening to it. And there were a few essays that I thought were at least good to think about. But one of the things that caught me most is it was one of her first or second essays in the book. I forget exactly which one. She mentioned a part of a book that I talked about previously. It's the book Sapiens. And in the book Sapiens, which is the history of the world, essentially, right? And in the book Sapiens, the author talks about there's a point in the development of the sapiens, Homo sapiens, which is what we are, right? Humans. And they said that sapiens didn't develop chronologically, right? You actually had several forms of sapiens, Neanderthal man and Homo erectus, and others maybe arrive at the same time or had cross paths and so on. And they said one of the things that set Homo sapiens apart was we developed the ability to have an imagination. We learned how to imagine things. And learning how to imagine things is what allowed us to be able to organize ourselves beyond the physical capacity of about 80 to 100. And it's the ability to imagine that allowed us to develop things both like politics as well as religion, right? Because you can't be religious without being able to imagine God, because you can't see God. A politician cannot lead thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people without getting them to imagine a bigger vision, right? So the ability to imagine let us develop both our politics and our religions. And she brought that up into one of the essays. And what it reminded me of was, at some point I've actually been thinking about that a lot in the past several months, because that really struck me when I read it in the book Sapiens. And I'm actually thinking about maybe bringing something about that argument into the book I'm writing, Decolonizing Faith, and at least doing a second cup of coffee about it more in depth. But that was kind of the thing. It struck me that she obviously had read the same. The book's very popular, so a lot of people have read it, but she was really struck by that same point, which is when he demonstrates or shows this is the point in history where Homo sapiens developed the ability to imagine. And so that's one of the books I'm reading, 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think. I may not finish it. There's 101 essays there. But there's probably a few more I'll go through and pick out. But yeah, that's one of the books I'm reading. Another book I'm reading is, and when I'm saying reading, I'm listening to, right? I've long given up trying to read physical books. I just don't have the time to sit down and read a physical book on a regular basis. And so I listen to audiobooks on my headphones. I have a subscription to Audible. I use the DC Public Library Service, which has an extensive library of audiobooks. And I also, another one I use, there's two other tricks I use. One is I learned that we have a family subscription to Spotify for our music. And Spotify just started a deal where if you have the family premium subscription, whatever it is, you get 15 hours of free Audible book listening a month. And I don't know when they started. I just noticed it a few months ago. And so it gives me a great chance to try some books, right? That's where I'm listening to the 101 Essays. I'm listening to it on Spotify because I have 15 hours. It doesn't matter if I download the whole book. It only counts how much I listen to it. And I get 15 hours a month. And so it lets me kind of try some books where I start. And so one of the books I'm reading right now is I'm reading Dune. And this is just, I try to have something I'm reading just for enjoyment. And I enjoyed the movies that came out, the Dune movies that were being streamed. I think it was on Hulu a few years ago. I forget where they were. And there was a new one that came out literally just a few weeks ago. And I thought, before I see the new movie, I want to actually get caught up on the series and read the books. And so I'm reading through the original book of Dune, which was written, I think, back in the 70s, if I remember correctly. It's fairly old. This is by Frank Herbert. And it's a good book to read. The other book I'm reading, and I just started this one yesterday, is called Deep Work. And this is the book I want to talk about for a few moments right now, because deep work is an interesting book. I talked a few weeks ago about the book Toxic Positivity, or not about the book The 5 a.m. Club. And I used it on my episode where I discussed toxic positivity. And I said there were a few things that were really helpful out of the 5 a.m. Club, but there was a lot of toxic positivity in there, where it kind of offers very simple solutions to some much more complex problems, doesn't acknowledge the reality of things that are actually going on. And so anyway, if you want, you can go back and listen to that episode if you didn't hear me talk about those things. But I just Googled yesterday, what are other books like the 5 a.m. Club? Because there's a few things I've taken from that book that are really actually helping me right now, right? I'm exercising every morning. I'm breaking a sweat every morning. I'm not getting up at 5 a.m., but I am, when I wake up, I exercise, I journal, and I learn. And so I'm actually out running / jogging every morning for about a mile. I am journaling every morning for about 20 minutes, and I'm taking anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to do some learning. And the learning I'm doing now is I'm using Duolingo and I'm learning Navajo, right? I'm keeping my Navajo up because I don't use it nearly enough. And I want to continue learning it and expanding my vocabulary, my ability to use it. And so I'm refreshing myself with some Duolingo right now and doing that every morning. And so I Googled, what are other books like the 5 a.m. Club? And the other thing I'm using from 5 a.m. Club is I'm taking 90 minutes, at least once a week, trying to do more regularly, even a few times a week, where I'm taking the first 90 minutes of my work day and I'm trying to cut out all distractions, turn off notifications on my phone, and focus on not the most pressing matter at work, but the most essential, which is something they recommend in that book too. And so I've been doing that. And so I just thought I'm curious. So I Googled, what are other books like the 5 a.m. Club? And I found a recommendation that was on Reddit, and it said, if you've read, here's 3 books talking about kind of productivity, which are helpful. The first one they recommended to start reading is Atomic Habits. Now, I haven't read that book, but I read the summary of that book, and that is a good book. I definitely like that book. It's a good book to read. I didn't have time to go through the entire book, but I did download the summary of it, and it was a few hours, and I did listen to that. And then it recommended the 5 a.m. Club, which again, I have a love-hate relationship with. And then it recommended this book called Deep Work. And Deep Work by Cal Newport is rules for focused success in a distracted world. And I'm on chapter 2. I've read the intro, chapter 1, and I'm in chapter 2 right now. And he talks about how technology is making us more distracted, right? Whether it's emails or instant messaging or social media. And he points out throughout history how some of the most important leaders and world changers were people who weren't necessarily immensely connected, but they were people who were able to work and putting aside distraction, whether it was authors holding themselves up for months, even years at a time to write their books, or whether it was leaders who were able to find time to focus in the midst of incredibly busy schedules. And he talks about, the first half of the book is about the need for deep work, why it's such a necessity, and why our technology is robbing us of our ability to think deeply and to do deep work. And then the second half of the book is ways to engage in clearing yourself of distractions and being able to focus more and do more. And a few things caught my attention, right? He mentioned a study that was done, and I forget the exact study, where they looked at like straight A students, or some of the best students at some of the best universities in the country. And they found that the top students, so if we'll just, I don't for the exact metrics, but the people who were getting 4.0s at the Harvards and the Yales and the MITs and the Stanfords of the world, they were studying less than the people who were getting 3.95s. And he doesn't give a lot of credence to just ability, right? I mean, that's some of it, but he said no, there's actually a lot of it is your ability to focus and to do things at a deeper level, and found that the people who were getting the 4.0s were able to do it by studying less because they learned the tricks or the discipline of being able to focus better, and so they could get more intense studying done in a short amount of time. And right, we've all read and heard the ways that social media distracts us, and email distracts us, and messaging, instant messaging distracts us, and we're losing quickly our ability to focus. And one of the things he lays out in this book is that he says there's three groups of people that will be successful in our increasingly distracted and technology-driven world. He said, first of all, the people who own the systems, right? The Mark Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musks, the venture capitalists, the people who own these networks, these computer networks, and own these systems, they will become very successful. And he said, I can't help you with that. This isn't a book about how to gain massive amounts of capital. So, but there's two other groups that will have greater success in this increasingly distracted, technology-driven world. And he said the first group is people who know how to work with and use AI, our smart technology. People who are comfortable with that and can use it to enhance their own productivity and are using it to they can work with it. Those people will be successful. And then he said the next group of people who will be successful are people who are experts in their fields. And because of the ability to work remotely, the ability to work on things you want to do, if you're an expert in your field, you'll be able to consult with a lot of different companies and do it remotely, even being able to use your expertise in a lot of really specific areas and places. And there's a lot of ability to be successful if you're an expert in your field. And those were the two groups of people. He said, this is who the book is for, not for people who are already experts, who already understand technology, for people who want to get there. And the way you get there is by learning how to think more deeply and work more deeply. And I'm finding a lot of what he's saying to be very compelling, right? And even as I've been working from my own, I don't work in an office, and I work from home, and I've been thinking a lot about how do I focus better, and dealing with the frustration of getting distracted, whether it's with messages or with phone calls or with other things, or even just social media, wasting time there. And I've been working very hard to try and regain my ability to focus. And I'm finding this book I'm not yet to the point where it's offering good tips, but it is making a compelling argument that our technology frequently serves as a distraction to our ability to work deeply, rather than a help, an assistant to our ability to work deeply. And so I'm going to continue reading this book. It's a pretty interesting book, and I'll probably share some more thoughts about it along the way. But these are just some of the things, right? The point of this podcast was I wanted to just share with you, these are not the things that I can come out with and say, hey, let's do this and we're going to change the world tomorrow. But what I'm realizing is, if I want to be involved in changing the world, and I want to build a movement that will that will result in changing the world, it's not just that I need to learn how to focus, or I need to learn how to be comfortable, and I'm in the unknown, or I just need to be the one watching sunrise, or I just need to be the one teaching the history, but I need to be raising up partners and colleagues and people who not only are motivated by these same things, but are even able to do many of these same things. Because if we want to have this national dialogue on race, gender, and class, if we want to wrestle with the foundations of our country, if we want to fundamentally change some of the principal foundations of our capitalism, which is land titles and the way those work, we're going to have a very intense and focused and meaningful national dialogue. And as we learned from the book I was reading on Rosa Parks, right? We love to think change comes because Rosa Parks decided to stay seated on a bus. And reading her book, it's like that is so far from the truth. That is a toxic positivity, demeaning expression of her life's work, where she had been trained and working so hard for all these years and able to be in the position to make that change. But it was not just a simple act. And if we make it that, we're largely undervaluing her work and her commitment. The world doesn't change just because some older lady doesn't want to stand up and give away her seat on a bus. That doesn't change the world. It's the hours and hours and hours of training and work and investment and teaching and understanding and trying things and going different directions behind the scenes that sets up the point where you can be in a position to bring in some fundamental change into the world. And I'm trying to do that while now being more of a public figure. And that's not going to, in and of itself, grow my platform. But the more people that can be along this journey, becoming world changers themselves, what I'm hoping is the next time I try to initiate a national dialogue, whether it's running for president, whether it's doing something else to try to initiate the dialogue, my hope is that the next time I try and do that, I'll have been able to have brought enough people along with me that we can actually get the dialogue to start to take root. That we can have enough of a group or a coalition or whatever it's going to be, right, who can help move the dialogue, nurture it, move it forward to the point where we need to get it to. So that's my challenge, right? And I'm grateful for all of you. I'm grateful that you are with me on this journey. It's not always going to be fireworks and excitement. There's going to be a lot of just learning how do we do this in a very committed and even hardworking way. But I haven't lost the vision yet, and I hope you don't either. I hope you don't lose the vision either. People say changing the world is going to take decades, hundreds of years, and I don't necessarily agree with that. My goal, before I die, the world I want to leave to my kids, is I want to edit the U.S. Constitution. I want to remove the racism, the sexism, and the white supremacy from our foundations. I want to change the legal precedent for land titles and change the way we use the doctrine of discovery. And I want to get our nation, the Vatican, and many, many other colonizing nations and institutions around the world to wrestle with the way they have used this dehumanizing doctrine to fill their coffers and to build their empires. If we can, and I think we can do that. I think we can do that. And then our children and our grandchildren can pick up the work of, okay, now that we've changed the foundation, how do we now live into that and make sure that we don't go down the path we were on before? How do we continue moving in the direction where we're going in the right way? But to do that, we have to change the course of the ship. And that's what I'm working on. That's what I want to do. And I'm grateful for everyone who is willing to join me and be a part of this work. And I'm excited to see where it's gonna take us. So anyway, I want to share with you a few things about my schedule coming up. I actually leave this Friday. I'm flying to Phoenix, and I'm going to be at the Phoenix Film Festival. And at the festival on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they are showing a documentary that I was a part of the filming for. It's called Bad Indian. And it's about a family whose ancestors, an Navajo family whose ancestors was hid out in Antelope Valley during the Long Walk and worked to try and protect the people while there. And they asked me to share some of my research on Abraham Lincoln and on the Long Walk. And it's a fairly, not central, but a fairly good piece of the documentary. And so I'm very excited to be able to be at the film festival. It's showing 3 days there, on this Friday, this Saturday, and this Sunday. And after each showing, they're going to have a Q&A. And so I'll be there for all 3 of those. And then on Monday, I'm flying to Gallup, New Mexico. And my father is going to be having hip replacement surgery this weekend, or this next week. And so I'm going to be with my father and mother for a week after my father's surgery to just help him around a little bit and make sure they're okay. And then next Saturday on the 20th, I am flying to Portland, Oregon. And in Portland, Oregon, I'm going to be doing 3 events. We don't have the details for them yet, but on Saturday evening, I'm going to be at a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon. And this is going to be an invitation only event because this is I'm going to do my first run of my Lincoln content. This Lincoln event that I've been working on for several months and trying to bring together to really help our nation deal with not only the reality of who Abraham Lincoln was, but what does it say about us that we actually hold him up as our greatest leader. And I'm working to weave kind of a personal narrative and even a comedic thread through this content. And I really want to use this to engage our nation with who Abraham Lincoln was and what does it say about us that we hold him up as one of our greatest presidents. And so I'm doing that first one in Portland, Oregon on April 20th. Not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after that. Then on Sunday morning, I will most likely be preaching at a church in Portland. I don't know which one yet, but I will be getting that information in the next few days, and I'll post that on my social media. And then on Sunday afternoon, I'm going to be doing kind of a public event where I'm going to be talking about content from my upcoming book, Decolonizing Faith. And it will be about a 2-hour event. I'll probably speak for an hour and a half or so, hour to an hour and a half, and then be able to answer questions afterwards. I'll have some of my Unsettling Truths books there for sale. But that will be, so I'll be in Portland, Oregon, not this coming weekend, but the weekend after that, the 20th and the 21st, and then I'll fly home on the 22nd. So I'll be on the road for about 10 days. I'm not sure how many second cups of coffee I'm going to do next week, but I will be doing a few, or I'm hoping I'll be doing at least one. My travel schedule will be a bit up in the air, so I'm trying to figure that out. I also want to let you know that this Thursday, I'm going to be speaking with a friend of mine, Lenore 3 Stars. And she is a friend of mine who is doing some great work, both in educating people and talking about Native spirituality. But there is some work she's doing with the Woodleys and another Randy Woodley and his wife Edith, and she is becoming known as a badass native grandma, I think the term is. Anyway, we're going to talk about that on Thursday. So she'll be a guest with me on Thursday over my second cup of coffee this week around 10:30 in the morning. I invite you to join us for that dialogue. It's going to be a fun conversation. If you want to go deeper into my work and to be a part of some of the ongoing conversation I'm having, you can always join me on Patreon. Here is the link to my Patreon site. I'm going to put that in there. And if you want copies of my book, either a single signed copy or if you want to do a book study, that comes with a free 45-minute virtual Q&A if you buy the 10 book special from my website. Both of those are available on my website, and you can do that there. Also, this coming Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, I am going to be a guest on the Karen Hunter Show on SiriusXM. It's on the Urban View channel. Her show runs from 3 to 6 weekdays Eastern Time. And I was on there about a week ago, and we had a great conversation about the trauma of white America. And she was so excited about it. She invited me back so we can go even deeper into it. And so from 5 to 6 this Thursday, Eastern Time on the Karen Hunter Show on SiriusXM, which you need a subscription for to access, I will be a guest on her show. And I'm very much excited to have that conversation and to even expand my audience a bit more because I don't normally reach out to the SiriusXM audience. And so I'm looking forward to that interview. So anyway, those are some things coming up, but I hope you all have a great day, my relatives. I hope your second cup of coffee is as good as mine is. Walk in beauty, my relatives, and may we all learn how to walk in beauty together. Yá'át'ééh and hako'onet.